Hello, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all of the places you can find me should be linked in the description box just below this video. Here on the channel, as always, you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting and spinning and crochet. A very big welcome to everyone who is taking some time out of their busy week to sit and keep me company as I chat along about all of the things that I've been making this week. I really appreciate you spending time with me. I have all of the usual segments to chat to you about, so knitting, spinning, crochet, and I also have some weaving this week as well. And then a little bit of chit chat at the end of the video with regards to knit-alongs and things like that. So I hope you will also stay tuned for that. It's been a bit of an up and down week here at Yarn and Yarns headquarters for a variety of different reasons. Most of them business related rather than personal related, but I'll save that for another video. I felt like I hadn't really got much done this week, but I've got quite a nice satisfying pile of objects to show you this week, and weirdly enough no works in progress, so everything I've got is finished or practically finished this week, so that's quite satisfying. It's one of the things I love about doing these videos. Some weeks I feel are not super productive, but then when I sit down to chat to you I realise that I have actually accomplished quite a few things. If you tune in regularly, you might notice my background's a little bit different. You can still see my orange wall. I usually sit a little bit further along that way, but it's right under the window. And today is really pelting down with rain, and it's one of those sort of really kind of blanket white grey kind of skies, which is messing around with the light a little bit. So over here in this corner of the room, the light seemed to be a little bit more consistent. So I've got my sort of stash behind me. Haven't quite figured out how to move around in this corner. You can also see my fabric stash behind me, and also some of my books up there as well. Anyway, I am waffling and I need to actually tell you about some stuff that I've been doing this week. I think I'm going to start with knitting this week, and I've got two finished objects to show you. One actually got finished just before Christmas, but I haven't had the opportunity to show it to you, and the second is a project that I finished this week. So first off, I have a hat that I made for James, and this was one of the presents that I gifted James for Christmas, and it's just a really simple navy hat with a beautiful cable detail around the brim. And I was chatting with my lovely friend Caroline, who is Colourful Creativity everywhere online, just before Christmas, and I said that I wasn't going to get James's cardigan finished, but I fancied making him a knitted gift, and I thought maybe a new hat would be in order. And she very kindly sent me her cabled brim hat pattern. There'll be a link to my project below this video, and you can follow the link to the pattern over on Ravelry. So this was perfect because it's just got that really sort of nice classic cable detail on top of a really sort of plain straightforward beanie. Of course, I couldn't make things simple for myself, and I think Caroline's pattern uses a worsted weight yarn, and I went down to, it might be worsted or it might be Aran. You'll be able to find the details over on the pattern page, but I went to a DK weight yarn. So I knew that I wanted to knit navy for James, and I almost went for the West Yorkshire Spinners Shetland Croft Aran, which there's a sort of slightly brighter navy than this in that colour range. And I was about to skein that up at the shop when I remembered that I'd already wound up a skein of Erica Knight British Blue in this lovely navy colour for another project that never came to fruition. So I thought rather than go with the navy, as this one was already wound up and ready to go, I would change my project and swap it down to a DK weight. So I knit the cable brim. I added a couple of pattern repeats to compensate for the different thickness in the yarn, and it turned out it was still too small, so I had to rip back the brim and add another couple of cable repeats. But in the end, this is a really nice sort of close-fitting beanie, and James has been wearing it a lot, hence why I haven't been able to show it to you before. This yarn is beautiful, the Erica Knight British Blue. It's a Blue Face Leicester 100% British wool, and I've knit with it before. I knit a top for myself, but it's nice and soft, and the colour is what I would call a real true navy. And yeah, so this got gifted to James on Christmas Day. It was a really quick knit. I think despite the false starts that I had, which was my own fault, nothing to do with the pattern at all. It's just the fact that I had to be awkward and to change the yarn. It knit up in a couple of days. So if I pop it on myself, you can see it's just a nice, really simple, close fitting beanie. And yeah, it's about the right length to keep the top of the ears warm, and James seems to really enjoy wearing it, which is the main thing. Second finished object in knitting this week, up until now, has been living in this gorgeous project bag. It's one of my favourites. It was gifted to me by a lovely viewer, and no surprises if you watched last week. These are the socks that I was working on. So these are a gift for James's dad, and I will be gifting them to him in April for his birthday. Hopefully, with any luck, by the time April rolls around, we'll be going into spring, and maybe he won't necessarily feel the need for woolly socks. However, James's parents are taking a trip to New Zealand to visit James's sister, so he's not going to need them now. It's somewhere in New Zealand, so I feel quite safe to keep hold of them until April so that I can gift them to him for his birthday. So I made these a 3x1 rib all over. I made him a pair using this recipe before, and they seem to fit him really well. Knit these using opal yarn. It's from the Fairy Tales collection, which is a new collection from Opal. And let me see if I've still got the ball band in the bag. Yeah. Colourway is 9797. And I knit those on the Knit Pro Smart Sticks, and I talked about those a fair bit last week too. So yes, I'm happy to have those finished. And if you watch my 12 cast-ons of Christmas videos, you'll know this was my accidental 13th cast-on. So the 13th cast-on has been the first project that actually got cast off as well. So last one on, first one off. So yes, hopefully he will enjoy those when I gift them to him. I did a modified Eye of Partridge heel flap. You can't really see it that well in the sort of variegated nature of the opal, particularly where the sort of heel fell in the pattern. There's a lot of variegation. It's sort of that big black and white stripe there. But that's okay, I enjoyed knitting it, and hopefully that will give a bit of reinforcement to help them last for hopefully many years to come. I have been working on one other knitted project this week, and that's also another pair of socks, but I'm knitting those in secret for a friend who sometimes watches the podcast. So I will probably show those in a couple of weeks once they've been gifted and received. I think I will switch to spinning next. Yeah, spinning. I have been spinning obsessed this week. I think I mentioned in last week's video that I pulled my, yes I did, I pulled my spinning wheel out of hibernation. I put it away over Christmas, and then it sort of languished for a bit. But I think I showed you last week I'd spun a full bobbin for the combo spin that I've been working on, and since then I've spun and plied all of this. So yes, 2 giant hanks of hand spun yarn have come off of my wheel since last week, and I couldn't be more pleased with them. Yeah, there's not really too much to say. I've spoken about my combo spin at length in various videos, and there's also a video dedicated to the start of the spin, so it's really nice to have made some really good progress on that this week. My basket of fibre is now looking much emptier. When I first started out the spin, I had more than a basket of fibre, and then I managed to squeeze it all in and it was overflowing the top, and now I'm kind of below the top rim of the basket. So I reckon 2 or 3 more skeins like this and I'll have spun through the fibre that I have left, which will be really exciting. I think I've got 4, this might be 5 or 6 skeins like this now in total in my bucket. I'm looking over there because just out of reach I've got a bucket with all of the yarn that I've spun for this project already. The last one that came off of the wheel, which is this one, is my favourite so far. I love this section here. It's really gorgeous and autumnal with the sort of marling of the colours. I really like it. As per usual, when I unravel these, there's actually 2 skeins tucked together because my bobbins, when I ply my yarn, don't accommodate everything, but they're quite different when I hold them up. So this one's a lot lighter, and this one is my favourite. It's got those gorgeous marling combinations in there, but I think together they're quite nice. When I was playing this one, I really wasn't that keen on it. Some sections are quite pastel-y, but actually I think in my finished garment it will be nice to have some lighter and some darker sort of tones. So I might do a little bit of management in terms of how I knit these skeins when I come to knit them together. I might kind of almost do a dark to light kind of fade in the garment when I actually get round to knitting it. So yeah, that was everything that came off of my wheel this week. And on my drop spindle, I finished the turquoise yarn that I showed last week. Matches my jumper today. Oh, that's a really good match, isn't it? So this was from a bundle that was gifted to me by my lovely friend Sal. Hi Sal. And I had this and the purple fibre that came in a learn to spin kit left to finish. So I finished this. As you can see, my skeins coming unravelled. I need to sort that out. And then I also spun the purple fluff, and I'll put a little clip of what the finished yarn looked like in here. Both of those skeins, the purple and the turquoise, were spun on the beautiful drop spindle that Sal gifted me. And that's going to segue us nicely into crochet. So the purple yarn has already been used completely, entirely, and I have all but finished the second of my 12/13 cast-ons projects. And the project is from this lovely book, Edward's Menagerie by Kerry Lord, and I was making, if you remember, Georgina the hippo, who started off as Austin the rhino. If you want to hear more about that story, then pop back to my 12 cast-ons video. I'll try and put a link in the iCards up here. And as you know, if you watch that video, I was using a really precious sort of 50 grams of worsted yarn from Spun Right Round that was gifted to me in a swap by a lovely friend. And I was really worried that I wouldn't have enough yarn to finish my project. And so one of you lovely viewers, and I can't remember who it was, sorry, I should have refreshed my memory before I started recording, suggested that I stripe Georgina's legs, and that is exactly what I did. So here she is in her almost finished glory. She has no eyes yet. In this whole house, if you can believe it, I have not been able to find a scrap of black yarn to do a couple of French knots for eyes. I know I have some, and I think it's at the shop. I think I took in, I've got some like leftover just acrylic black yarn, and I think I took it into the shop because someone else wanted a tiny little bit of leftover, and I think it's still there. So she has no eyes yet, but as you can see, she has everything else, and she is adorable. So yes, the variegated sort of main colour is the Spun Right Round yarn that I was gifted, and I picked out sort of the purpley flecks as something that I thought would be a good contrast for the stripes. If you remember last week, I was going to stripe in some grey yarn and you couldn't really see the striping, so I ripped that out and went with the purple. So this is my purple hand spun. The hand spun is a little bit thicker than the Spun Right Round, but that's okay. I think it's worked out nicely. I did use every last scrap of my purple handspun, and in fact the nostrils, which are also from purple handspun, are a different purple. I had a tiny little bit left from another project. I think I used the purple in my handspun shawl, and I had like only a few meters left, but it was perfect just to crochet 2 little circles. So this purple here, you might be able to see, is slightly darker than the striping. I also ran out of the purple on the sort of second pair of legs. These arms and legs are all the same pattern, and as I was working the third one, I realised that I wouldn't have enough to finish the fourth, so I left out, so these the arms up here have 5 stripes of purple and the legs only have 4. So yeah, as I was working through this, I realised I wouldn't have enough, so I just switched to the plain grey for the top of the legs. And when she sat down, the sort of that top part of the leg disappears anyway, so that last purple stripe wouldn't be seen if she sat. And so yeah, that was the sort of compromise that I made to make my yarn go as far as it could, and as I say, I used up every last scrap. The other thing that happened is that the spun right round ran out as well, and actually it ran out here. So on the third leg that I made, she's got a spun right round foot and 1 spun right round stripe, and then the rest is the plain grey that I was going to use to stripe with the spun right round for the legs. And so I had to make this top part and this whole leg out of the grey. But I have no problems with that at all. You can see she's got 1 plain little foot, which I think is actually another cute detail. I didn't want to kind of rip out the project just for the sake of a few rows of crochet, and it's just a little amigurumi for me. She'll sit on my shelf, so I'm not going to mind the fact that I ran out of yarn, and I just actually love the fact that I was able to use this precious skein of spun right round, and I think she's turned out beautifully. I can't wait to give her some eyes, but for all intents and purposes, Georgina is now finished. I love her. The final section for this week is weaving. So I managed to finish the woven project that I started a couple of weeks ago, and you may have seen this week I put a really short yarn and yarns extra video up onto the channel showing me warping up the loom for that project. And this is only my second ever woven project. I decided to use some hand spun, and it was a little bit of an experiment to see how long a piece of fabric I could get from warping up my loom at 2 sort of fixed points in my house. I wasn't sure whether it would get me a scarf long piece, and how far also the hand spun yarn that I was using went. It went quite a long way, but it's slightly short of what I would like as a scarf length. So here it is. So that is the half width, as you can see. If I hold it out entirely, I won't be able to show the full piece. So for my warp, I used some Rowan Baby Merino silk, and this was a ball of leftover yarn from a previous project that I made. And for the weft, I used my hand spun yarn, and this is some Poledale fibre, and it was from Curio Yarns in her Christmas Gone Wrong colourway. And I think it worked up beautifully in this woven piece. I'm really, really pleased. I have quite a long sort of end. I've hem stitched the ends, but I haven't really sort of decided exactly what I'm going to do yet. So if I'd have had a little bit more hand spun, then I may have got squeezed out a couple more inches from this. But I still think I need to move my loom and my warping peg slightly further apart to get a proper scarf length project. So let me put this round me. So for a scarf, I like to sort of double wrap, and as you can see, the ends are really quite short. I would prefer them to be, you know, hanging down another sort of 6 inches or so each side. So yeah, not quite long enough for a decent scarf length. You get an okay sort of like crossover scarf length. Let me try and just move the camera down so you can see properly. doesn't really show. It looks longer than it is, I think, because I'm sat down. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty pleased. It was a really good experiment. It was so much fun to use this hand spun yarn. I love the colours in this beautiful fibre that Ellie dyed. My edges still leave a fair bit to be desired. They're a little bit wonky in places, particularly there, like you can see it's going waving up and down a bit. But I'm pretty pleased. I think some of the waving is due to the nature of the hand spun. My hand spun in this particular fibre was a little bit thick and thin in places. So I think, you know, where I was getting to the end of my fabric with a sort of thicker piece of yarn, it was leaving a bit of an extra on the edge. And then obviously if I had a finer piece of yarn, even trying to pull at the same tension, we're just making it sort of wobble a little bit on the edges. That bit there in particular, I think you can see. But other than that, it's okay, fairly consistent, and definitely a usable piece of fabric. Now to decide what to actually do with it. As I say, I don't think it's quite long enough to use as a scarf. So I could sew up both ends, and this would definitely be long enough for a sort of close-up double wraps cowl. If I just pop that over my head twice, holding onto the ends very awkwardly. So that's an option. So if I sewed it up and cut the fringing off, I would have a reasonable, like, under my coat cowl. So that's an option. I could also cut this up for bags, and actually the fact that I've got the fringing on is making me think, you know, I could have one of those sort of like fringed shoulder bags if I trimmed it off, and then I'd still have some left. I can't really decide. What would you do? Let me know in the comments below. I could just leave it as it is and, you know, not really use it as such, and just have it as kind of an experiment in my weaving. Yeah, thoughts, suggestions, ideas, please let me know below. But yeah, I really enjoyed that project, and it was really rewarding to see those colours come through on the hand spun yarn. I don't have a current weaving project on the go, but I am excited because I received a new piece of equipment this week. Thank you so much to anyone who has been watching the channel and has been able to support over on Ko-fi. I set a goal a couple of weeks ago to try and raise enough money to buy myself a new reed for my loom, which was a little bit of a selfish goal, and I wasn't sure how people would feel about that, but so many of you were so kind enough to support that goal, and I have a new reed for my loom. So this is a 12 dent reed. I didn't bring the other one up, I should have, just to show you the difference, but basically there are more of these dents, as they're called, per inch. So this means I am going to be able to weave with 4-ply or fingering weight yarn, which is really exciting for me because that's a lot of what is in the stash behind me here. And I also have lots of sort of leftovers and scraps, and that's what I'm going to plan to use next on the loom as an experiment with this particular reed. So at some point in the not too distant future, maybe not for the next week or so, I'm hoping to warp the loom back up and get a new project going. So yeah, once again, thank you so much to anyone who has been able to support the channel over on Ko-fi. I really appreciate it. It's, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's been a bit of a tough week here, and just having you guys out there supporting and cheering me on, and being able to order this piece of equipment and having it arrive, it actually arrived on Friday, was a real boost exactly when I needed it. So thank you so much. I don't have a goal going over on Ko-fi at the moment, but if I think of anything soon that I think might improve the content here on the channel, then I shall pop up another goal. So yeah, that's kind of the making content really, and I hope you found something to enjoy there. It was really fun for me to be able to have knitting, crochet, spinning and weaving this week. I know not all weeks will be like that. I think particularly with the weaving, it takes me a good couple of weeks to get through a reasonable sized project. So it was nice that I was at a point with several projects that I was able to kind of get a few things finished as well. I just wanted to remind everyone that we have the 12 cast-ons make along going on over in the Ravelry group. So for those of you who joined in with the 12 cast-ons of Christmas, there is now a thread over in the Ravelry group for your finished objects. I'm going to keep that thread going for the whole year, so if you joined in and started any project as part of the 12 cast-ons make along, we're just going to plough through and see how many of our projects we can get finished by the end of the year. And yeah, I'm really happy because this week I finished 2. 2 down, 11 to go. Obviously a lot of my projects are much bigger than a pair of socks, so how many of mine I will get through, who knows, but it will be fun to cheer each other along. The chatter thread from the original make along is still open as well, so the FO thread is literally just for pictures of your finished objects, and if you want to keep chatting and encouraging each other, then just use that original chatter thread. I am also going to start the new techniques make along from next week, so look out for an announcement on that. So if you didn't join in with the 12 cast alongs, if you didn't join in with the 12 cast-ons and would like to be part of a make along, then hopefully that one might be of interest to you. So I'll chat more about that next week, and next week I'll also have the announcement for the prize draw for the 100th vlog giveaway. And that's a really nice giveaway, so there's still time to enter that. You've got 1 more week left. I will close that when I start to record next week. If you want to know how to enter that, then just go back and watch the 100th vlog. So I think that's everything I have to chat about with you this week. I hope that you are able to enjoy a wonderful week to come, and that you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. And until I get to speak to you again, great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.